MusicStoreLive.com, and today I have the great pleasure to be speaking with Rudy Sarzo, bass player who's played with just about everybody, Ozzie Osbourne, Whitesnake, Quiet Riot, Blue Oyster Cult, so just huge list of acts. Rudy, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak to us today. I know you have a lot going on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Al. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So maybe we could start, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you have going on right now in your musical life. Are there any projects that you're working on? Or?
Yeah, for the past year, I've been touring with the Jeff Tate version of Queensryche. Also, I have other projects that I'm involved with. One of them is called Project Rock, and we've been mostly touring in Russia with that. We've done 3 tours in the last year. And let's see, Metal USA, which is basically more of a Japanese-centric project. When I say Japanese-centric, it's very much involved with the Japanese culture and anime and superhero, art form.
Wow,
and,
so
musically? In Japan, yeah. Yeah. It's we do speed metal versions of the anime theme songs, and now
oh my God, that's awesome.
Stuff. Yeah, we perform as superheroes. So, I mean, it's wild, it's wacky, and I just love it.
Oh, that's great, man. So do you dress up too, or is this?
Oh yes. As a matter of fact, we have kabuki makeup artists that work with us, and they put our makeup on because it's very. It's not something that you just pick up. It's very traditional, and it has to be done right. Otherwise it's not accepted. By the fans. And
right,
yeah. And other things that I'm involved with is let's say Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. I do those. I do a few of those every year. And recently I've been touring with the Randy Rhoads Remembered, which is, are you familiar with the Bonzo Bash? Those events that, they are to celebrate John Bonham. And we'll be the same producers of that event, of those events, because they've been going on for a while. Brad Tichy and Joe Sutton, they put together this Randy Rhoads Remember, and we have the Randy Rhoads family involved, Kelly and Kathy. As a matter of fact, Kelly performed with us on the last 5 shows that we did on the East Coast. So, just keeping busy. I'm sorry?
Is Kelly a guitar player?
No, Kelly's he plays piano. But with us, Kelly comes on and we do Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot era songs that, and since I used to play with Randy in Quiet Riot also, it's something that is very dear to me to be able to go back, play songs from 40 years ago. Yeah, 45, 35 years ago.
Do you have to relearn any of them, or are they just there for right when you go to play them?
I had to relearn everything because it's the last time I played those songs was like what? Actually, we had a reunion in 1980, so that's 34 years ago, 35 years ago. So, but I did most of the playing of those songs in 78, 79. So and doing that in 35 years, I play 1,000 of the songs more or less. So you have to go back and revisit them and go, oh yeah, this is what I used to do. Fortunately, there's YouTube videos, so I go back and listen to what I used to play, and then, of course, 35 years later, I'm a different bass player, so I play them a little bit different according to, where I'm at as a musician today, So,
did you ever surprise yourself?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever surprise yourself with what you played in the past?
Yeah, actually, I not only what I play, but the tone, which is very important, because tones change, and it's really an interesting evolution of what they change. Is for example, when I was playing with Quiet Riot in the 70s, there was certain amplification and certain technology available, and then it progressed, and radio had a lot of huge influence. When I say radio, is because records it got airplay according to certain formats that certain radio station programmers, came up with. And I do remember then that during the 80s, when a lot of bass synthesizers like the Oberheim was using a lot of records and even drum machines, we bass players, not keyboard bass players, but we bass players, guitar bass players, we had to adapt to that. And that's we either had to shift from using analog, passive instruments like, let's say, a standard Fender, Precision or Jazz, to more of the preamp basses, just to be able to compete with the tones that were achieved by the bass synthesizers, and strings, going from flat wound to round wound, and amplifications, changing from, let's say, back in the day, I used to play a 360, which was a 18-inch folded horn, a cab, or 15s going to the A10s, we had a different tone to them, using different pedals, everything changed, and you had to, adapt as the sound changed. But I think right now we're at a place where there's less of radio programming influence in how we record, and it's more like I get myself going back to the sound, going back to the tone that I used to have back then,
I see. That's cool. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the bass that you're playing right now, and maybe you could tie that in with what you were just talking about. Absolutely.
I have a relationship with Peavey Electronics dating back to 1982, which was the first time that I played Peavey products. At one point I was touring with Peavey amplifiers and Peavey basses, my own signature model. So right now I have I think this is my third or fourth signature model with Peavey, and it's a Cirrus, and it sounds amazing. I mean, I have my signature model, the first Rudy Sarzo bass with him in 1989, and I used it during the 1990 Whitesnake tour, And I mean, if you Google it, you get a lot of reviews of people who actually own it and bought it back then, and it's always like a 5-star review. They did a fantastic job. Then after that, Peavey designed the Cirrus bass, which I actually started playing in 1997. And now the Cirrus bass, Peavey bass, is only available as my signature model right now. So I am honored, and I am so pleased of what a great sounding bass it is. And also at $799, list price, I mean, you can't really find a better bass than that one. It's just incredible. It's active. It's got a great, but also you can set it up if you put everything in the middle. If you don't boost any of the bass or mids or highs to it, and you just leave it flat, it's going to give you a very analog-like response to your tone, which is something that we were shooting for. Another addition to it, it's the power plate, which is a metal plate that's been installed in the back of the headstock to add sustain and actual natural compression to the bass. I always like to use a little bit of compression or limiter on my signal, but what I do when I play my signature model Cirrus is I don't have to overdo it in order to compensate, because it already has enough of its own naturally built into the tone of the bass, and it adds a lot of sustain and there's no dead notes. I mean, it's all equally, it's a very even tone and sustain throughout the whole neck. It's 24 fret, which I gravitate more towards 24 fret instruments, and this one is just beautiful. I mean, from the highest to the lowest note, it's very even and punchy and beautiful.
And neck through too, right?
It is neck through. Yeah, absolutely. It's just a beautiful, beautiful bass.
That's great. Yeah, and for that price, that's a great price too. So.
It is. It is. I mean, it sounds like it has the same quality as a $3,000, $4,000 bass, but $799, which to me is very important because my first bass was a 1967 Fender Jazz that I bought in 1967, which meant that bass was with me throughout my garage years. It was through my club years, recording years. I even played all the way with Ozzie Osbourne on tour, and I think that is all musical instruments should be like that. It should take you through your musical journey in life, and also it should inspire you to be a better musician. We want to make an affordable instrument that a professional can take that on stage with them to a recording gig, or somebody who is a young musician who's seriously looking into pursuing a musical career can invest in that instrument and, be part of their musical journey.
So do you still own that bass?
Which one?
The first one you said they bought.
Oh, my 67. No, I don't. Well, again, a lot of us who actually had vintage instruments during the 70s, we had to hack them in order to keep up with what I was telling you about, the transition from passive to active, and mine was hacked. I mean, I back in the mid 70s, I got rid of the Fender bridge and I put a badass. We all did, because Fender bridges had the tendency to slip, And what I would do is I would find like match covers and put them underneath. In a club, I would find like anything. I was playing in Miami, which is really humid, and you would get a lot of mildew in your strings, and your neck would tend to warp and get all these funky spots, with the frame, which is one of the reasons why Jacko removed all the frets from his bass, because that's when he decided to go fretless, because the weather in Miami can really destroy your instrument, if you really don't take extra care of it. And what would happen was, we were gigging. I was gigging all the time. So sometimes my bass would just stay in the trunk of my car,
Oh, yeah.
So it was like, I would come home really tired at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I would have to go to college, and I would just keep my bass in the trunk and my amplifier in the passenger seat, So,
yeah.
Because, you get home so tired at 5 o'clock in the morning after doing 6 sets, 45 on, 15 off. It was like I just want to get some sleep, So you're really not thinking about what's going to happen to your instrument. All you want to do is just get some sleep, and the next day pick it up again. And sometimes it's the heat, the humidity will have an impact on its playability.
Right. Yeah.
And,
all out of whack. Hey, you mentioned that first jazz bass that you bought. When did you really feel like you came into your own sound? When did you start thinking, okay, this is who I am as a musician?
Ooh, it's definitely a work in progress. It really is a work in progress. I mean, when I was growing up, I had certain musical references as far as tone goes. And tone is something. Tone is part of your DNA. We all hear things different. I mean, I might listen to a bass player, and I go, wow, he's getting a beautiful tone. Now, he might be hearing his own tone completely different from the way that I hear his tone.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So to me, it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, I can only say, like, for example, my favorite tones is like, let's say, early John Entwistle. And I say early because the older he got, his tone change. It was not as pure as it was when, let's say, he recorded Life at Leeds, which is like my favorite bass tone that he had, which which is more of a pure, let's say, a precision bass going into a really, cranked up amplifier. I've seen John Entwistle play around town. He's sitting in jams, in Los Angeles back in the 80s, and he could just walk in, let's say there would be a bass player jamming, and he would sounded pretty good, and then John Entwistle would just pick up the same bass through the same amp and just play it, and it sounded like John Entwistle because a lot of his tone was in his hands.
Yeah,
the way he positioned and the way that his hands were physically, he had very beefy fingers, and he hit the strings. He plugged them in a certain spot in a certain way, So
who were some of your other influences?
Oh, Chris Squire, Jaco Pastorius, Stanley Clarke, you name it. But go back to Entwistle. Through the years, he started going from more of a passive tone to more of an active tone. And one of the things that I do experience when I play, with an active bass, like let's say with a Peavey for the Cirrus, what I like to do is, unless I'm looking for a really electronic tone, I like to leave it flat in the EQ. That way I'm controlling the overtones that going active can actually give you, especially when you're recording. When I'm recording, I like to leave it as flat as possible so I have a really
What's that, Rudy? I didn't hear that last part.
I'm sorry?
I think I lost you just on that last part when you were talking about going with your flat EQ.
Yeah.
I think I lost you again, Rudy. Are you still there?
To a different room.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, okay.
There you
go. Okay. Is this better now?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. No, talking about adding active EQs on the guitar. When I record, what I prefer to do is to leave my EQ flat. That way I have better control of the overtones that I would get if I was adding any active EQ to the bass. Yeah. And then what I do is once I record it, then I start to bump certain tones, certain frequencies. But this is in post. I would add certain plugins or whatever I need to, in order to have the desired tone to my bass track. I do a lot of recording at home, which means that a lot of times I just get the tracks, like the stems of the bass. Of the drums and the guitars and the vocals, and then I add the bass, which means that I'm probably not going to be there present for the mix. So what I would like to do is I track DI, then I send over a DI track, and sometimes I do send an amp track, but most of the times I don't, and I just leave it up to whoever's doing the mixing to add whatever EQ or amping to it, just in order to fit into what the vision of the mix is going to be all about for that particular record.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. So when you record at home, do you have a home studio and stuff, and you just kind of sit down and lay down whatever you're hearing, or?
No. I have my home studio here, and I use Pro Tools. That's my main recording, software. And that's how I do it, And of course, I communicate with the producer or whoever's doing the mix and make sure that what I'm laying down, not only musically but also tone-wise, it's needed for the record.
Right. Rudy, what makes a good bass player for you?
Oh my God, creativity, and also playing fearlessly.
Fearless. I like that word.
Yeah. My favorite bass players are guys who just push the envelope. You cannot, you have to be fearless in order to do that. Also, you have to be in the same room with everybody playing in order to do that. One of my peeves when I have to record a track on my own is not watching the drummer, not being able to see the body language, which that's where the magic happens. Some of my favorite drummers that I've ever played with had really excellent body language, very clear body language. So I could actually look at them, or peripherally. I wouldn't even have to be looking straight at them. I could see them from my peripheral vision, and I could actually tell when they're going to do a certain drum fill, or they're going to do certain crashes, or whatever. Just by watching them, their body language. So that's something that I really miss when I lay down a track and I'm all by myself in my studio.
Right. Yeah. You kind of have to. Yeah. You don't have that crutch. I was watching an interview with you, and you were describing. I forgot which drummer it was, but you were saying you couldn't watch his hair because it was on the offbeats, and it would throw you off.
Yeah. That was when I played with Tommy Aldrich. He's when I used to play with him back in the '80s. He had like big curly hair, and his hair went against the beat of his head. Because I was like, I would not look at his head. I would just look at his shoulder from the shoulders. He has a lot of shoulder movement. He pivots a lot in the drum kit. So that was kind of like the part of the body that I will concentrate looking at. A lot of shoulder motion.
Would you say your outlook on music has changed over the years?
Not necessarily on music, but on my own musical progression. Yes. It's not that it's changed. It's just that it's progressed. It has grown. I'm still rooted the same as I was, when I first started playing. The certain type of music that I gravitate towards. And I'm actually going back to those more and trying to incorporate more of that in my playing. I started playing mostly R&B, funk. I really didn't get to be in a real rock band or a band that just played rock until I joined Quiet Riot back in the 70s, with Randy Rhoads. That was purely a rock band. But prior to that, I was mostly in top 40 bands, growing up in Florida. And we used to play anything, whatever was on the radio. And back then, the radio format could be anything, top 40, could be anything from Johnny Cash to Led Zeppelin, or funk, Kool and the Gang, disco, whatever, Barry White. So I just, I learned all these different styles, from thumping and slapping and playing R&B, James Jamerson, and, to playing, John Paul Jones, Led Zeppelin. So it was really a great musical education, and it's still part of my toolbox. I can always pull anything. Whatever needs to be played, it's in my toolbox because I already have that, experience of playing that style. That's part of my musical journey, growing up, playing in clubs and so on.
Right, yeah. I was going to ask you, Rudy, why you think you're successful, and I think at least musically that sounds like it might have something to do with it, but what about just in general? What do you attribute your success to?
Yeah, it's simple fundamentals, such as one of my fundamentals philosophies is that, I've been in bands where I'm actually there at the very beginning, so I look at the individuals, and it's kind of like look at the musical ingredients that we all bring into the group. So I basically gravitate towards the flavor of what the band is going to be all about once you put all the individual components together, And also, I have been in many situations where I come into a group that already has a legacy, a catalog to it. And this is something that I recommend to any musician that comes into this situation. You always remember, you are joining the band. The band is not joining you. I say this from experience because I've been in bands where other musicians come in, guitar players or drummers or whatever, and they tend to want to find a comfort zone, bring their own comfort zone into the group and try to change the direction and the sound of the band to suit whatever they've been doing. You know what I mean? Instead of them adapting to what the direction of the band is. And that doesn't have a very positive outcome because it just changes everything.
Right.
And to me, the key to my success is if I come in as an equal contributor from the very beginning of the group to look at all the ingredients that are in the group and because since I can go in just about any direction, I have to be very I have to really look at the vision of what the group is going to be according to the ingredients, But if the direction has already been defined prior to me joining the band, I have to be very focused, and it's kind of like there's a piece missing in the puzzle, so I have to mold myself into that piece and be seamless and not, you know what I mean? So it doesn't overlap into other areas. Once I fit into the puzzle, then the band, and of course every group has its own journey musically, its own progression. Like let's say I play with Dio, with Ronnie James Dio, and grew musically from being a member of Rainbow to being a member of Black Sabbath and having his own band, Dio. And there was always a progression. Ronnie was a musician who always grew and progressed with every record. So, of course, when I joined the band, I studied everything that we were doing, in our set list, and then listened to what the musicians were playing currently. Because, of course, when we played Rainbow songs, we had Craig Goldie on guitar, not more. So he had a certain way of playing it that it was not exactly like Richie Blackmore, but it definitely suited the sound of Dio.
I see.
Yeah. So and to me, most important with the drums. Like for example, when I joined Ozzy Osbourne, there were 2 albums recorded already, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of the Madman, with a different rhythm section, Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake. But when Tommy started playing those songs, he played them differently than Lee recorded them. So I had to adapt to that. So it was more of me playing it, doing, following the blueprint that Bob Daisley laid down with his recordings of those records, but also I had to adapt it to the way that Tommy Aldridge played the drums in order to fit as a rhythm section.
Right, and I think especially as a bass player too, it's all about supporting and molding to that role. Absolutely, because we are right in the middle. We're percussion, we're rhythmic, but also we're melodic. So we are the gooey, sticky stuff in the Oreo. Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to put it. Kind of, puts everything together.
Yeah, we're only it. Yeah.
Hey, Rudy, I really appreciate you speaking with us today, but before I let you go, I have one last question I want to ask you. We've been asking everyone this. What is music?
Well, music is definitely, I know it sounds cliche, but it's definitely the universal language. and I can say this from experience because I stood on stage around the world and be able to communicate better through music than any other language. I mean, I get off the stage and try to speak English or sometimes Spanish because I also speak Spanish to anybody. And if they don't understand, if they have no knowledge of that language, I can't communicate with them. But boy, I can definitely communicate with my bass. You know.
Yeah.
So it is definitely the universal language. And to me also, it's music. It's the ultimate peacemaker. I can't really recall, remember, or even think of anybody if anybody killing somebody while they're playing an instrument. And can you think of an incident that ever happened?
I don't know. I kind of don't want to, but
yeah, but really, I mean, you know, that what I'm trying to say is every time that I'm on stage performing, I look at the crowd. People, nobody's being. I mean, you know, you watch a mosh pit or something like that. That's as violent as it gets. You know, everybody's busy enjoying the music rather than committing a violent act to the point of killing somebody. You know, the only time that I can even think of it would be Altamont when that happened. You know, but I think, you know, we as musicians, I think music gives us an opportunity to be peaceful and to be able to be a conduit for a higher power.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that no matter what you believe in, anybody believes in, you know, there's you know, even if you believe in evil, well, that's a higher power too. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's not necessarily just one-sided.
You know, so there's definitely, you know, so music is really, to me, it's the ultimate. It's what music, you know. I look at music as the language that man uses to communicate with the higher power. You know, because to me that was the original intent. If you look back at the beginning of time and you think of, imagine that first man or, you know, couple of people and all by themselves listening to nature, listening to the sound of thunder, that was man. Music became a way for man or woman to communicate, to answer back. You know, men, you know, the first musical instrument, the voice, men roaring to recreate the sound of nature, the sound of thunder, you know, beating on logs to communicate with the higher power. Also realizing that there's a tribe across the valley. So you use the drums and then you keep adding instruments. You have the drum circle, you have the tribe communicating. So to me, music is actually nature's language to communicate with mankind and a higher power. That's what music really means to me.
That's a great response, Rudy. Thank you so much. I think that's a great note to end on. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think we pretty much cover everything. And I mean, if you want to talk more about Peavey, their products or their legacy, you know, yeah, absolutely.
Well, now, are you using any of their amps too?
No, I'm actually using what I used to use back in the 70s, which is acoustic amplifiers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I have used Peavey and I have used Trace Elliott on tours in the past.
Right. Let's see. You've been with Peavey since 82, you said, right?
1982, yes.
Yeah, that's a long time. That has to be one of the most rewarding experiences for a musician, I would imagine, is when, you know, you have your own line of instruments, essentially. Yeah,
but, you know, there was a time when I did not have my line of instrument, and I was still, you know, working with Peavey, because I really believe in the whole Peavey philosophy, and I believe in the quality, and I believe in the vision, you know, from day one. You know, I'm a big fan of Peavey. I'm a big fan of Hartley, and I'm a big fan of the people that work and design Peavey instruments.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like some of that quality isn't as abundant as, you know, we would like to think as musicians. So it's always refreshing, you know. When,
yes, and I really appreciate a company like, you know, Peavey, who has been providing me with the best tools that I can find in the market for, I would say, most of my professional career, all of my professional career, you know.
Yeah, my God, so that's over 30 years, geez.
Yeah, exactly, 32 years, yeah. And they listen, you know, it's the type of company that you actually, they want your feedback, they want you to become part of the family. You know, I've been instrumental in the design of my basses, especially the first Sarzo signature model. It took us about 2 years, me working with Mike Powers on the design from the headstock all the way to the bridge, the electronics. I mean, it took us a while to actually get it to the point that we felt we got exactly what we were looking for.
Right, and what's that process like, going back and forth? I mean, they send you a bass, and you kind of, well, it's good.
Oh,
but
no. No, actually, I visited the factory during tours a lot, especially when I was playing, during the, let's say when the tour was like on the South, I would just work all day long, you know, with the design of the instrument, the electronics, especially the electronics. It's very, very important. And also, you know, with the vision of keeping it at a certain price range, because I always believe get the consumer the most for their money.
Cool. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. This is Al over at Music Store Live, talking to Rudy Sarzo. And, hope to see you down the line, Rudy.
You got it, Al. Thank you so much. God bless.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.